Good morning. The Ways and Means will come to order. Mr. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Alderwoman Davis. Alderman Moore. Alderman Vaccaro. Present. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Murphy.
Here.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Here.
Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Williamson.
Here.
Alderwoman Davis.
Present.
President Reed. You have 5 present, Mr. Chairman. You have
All right. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. We have several items on the agenda today. First, we're going to take up Board Bill number 1. We're going to have the Budget Director come up, Mr. Paul Payne of the City of St. Louis. He's going to discuss the fiscal year 18-19, and he'll discuss the amendments that were passed through the Board of E&A. Good morning, Mr. Payne.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I do have some handouts for you, which I'll distribute right now. Okay. As you recall, the last time you met and discussed on the budget, you had a series of proposed amendments, both cuts and adds. Now, obviously, as the Board of Aldermen, you can make reductions, but additions you request the Board of E&A to consider, and then they, so you did that. You sent a letter to the Board of E&A. The Board of E&A met yesterday to consider those changes, and the result is what you have before you. So what I'd like to do is on the summary page, which is the second page attachment there, there's a list of proposed amendments, some of which you had recommended, and some which are in addition to the ones you had recommended, and I'll walk you through each one of those. And behind that summary page are all the detailed amendments as well. So item number 1, the Department 334, that's for the election board. If you recall, that was correction, it was requested correction to their position and table of organization. It was for $87,823. That was also offset by a reduction of the same amount in a different account, so that was a net zero change there. Item number 2, neighborhood stabilization. This is funding for the restoration of 12 the NSO positions. This is the full funding for $800,000. If you recall, when you proposed your amendment, there was you were proposing a restoration of about 10 of them for $616,000. But since that meeting, we've had that agreement with the parking meter division to provide an additional $800,000 for those items. And so what this does is restore it fully to $800,000. Now, there's 2 corollary amendments to that. So because of that money coming in now, that means you don't need to do the reductions in the capital accounts. So you can see the 2A is the restoration of that, the debt payment that was coming from capital, that's $616,000 in the capital fund, and 2B is the restoration of the cut for the ward account. So that would be restoring the previous cut that you guys had voted on earlier. Item number 3, 401, that's communications divisions. That's funding for the supplies and equipment that you voted on earlier, $100,000. That was approved by E&A. Now, the reduction you had approved was the reduction in the building demolition fund. Now, in order to make that work, there needed to be a budget which went across both funds, and that's the police department, basically. So that $100,000 increase and $100,000 decrease you see in 3A and 3B, that doesn't change their police budget. That's just a matter of the mechanism for getting you the $100,000 you requested for communications, if that makes sense. Item number 4, citywide capital fund. Again, that's another one of those $616,000. That's restoring that cut in Fund 1217. Okay, and so in addition to those, there were some other changes. Item number 5, it's 513 towing division, $250,000 in fleet vehicles. That is also tied to the money that was going to be provided through the parking meter division. That was part of that agreement. Item 650, this police department, they proposed a change in their table of organization for a system development manager and a criminalist positions, but they also had reductions in some line items to offset it, so that's a no change dollar amount in their budget. Item number 7, Department 340, that's the Treasurer's Office of Financial Empowerment. There was a correction of the amount, the college savings program amount of $13,000, and that's from the parking meter division, so that is revenue from that division itself. Item number 8, Department 711, that's communicable disease control. They are adding there was a grant funding available, and they're adding a health marketing administrator to that health grant, and so you can see that is under Fund 1166. Item number 9, again, the citywide accounts, that's the city, the reappropriation, the FY18 funds for economic development sales tax. On the economic development sales tax, if you recall, we had those appropriations on a percentage basis. That's the new board is now being assembled, but those monies that were appropriated this year have not been spent. The 3 accounts for the 10% for the neighborhood stabilization, jobs development, all. So in order to spend, incorporate that into next year, in order to spend that going into next year, they'd have to be reappropriated, and so that's what that does. Item number 10, the capital fund. These are not, this is not a change in any of the funds, but what it is a detail for instance, the ward accounts, which you earlier had just a lump sum number. Now we've got the detail. You'd work, individual aldermen had worked with the BPS, and so now we have your actual detail included, as well as the neighborhood parks funds. Those were also, the Parks Committee has met and made their recommendations. So you see some exhibits in the back which detail those items. And so those are the changes, and you can see offsetting, you have your reductions. So the net increase overall in the general fund is $950,000, and that's to be funded with the $1,050,000 additional funds from parking meters, less the $100,000 that is coming out of the communications revenue, which goes back to the communications division. Local use tax fund, no bottom line change there. Miscellaneous special funds, that's the $13,000 for the Office of OFE. The communications fund goes up by $100,000 through the communications revenue is paying for that. Economic development sales tax fund goes up $3.3 million. Again, that's just a reappropriation of the funds that have not been spent this fiscal year. And then you've got the grant fund going up by $75,000. And then bottom line is there are no changes in the capital fund. And that's the substance of the proposal to amend both, to reconcile your amendments with additional recommendations from Board of E&A. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay, thank you. Alderwoman Davis.
No questions.
All right, Alderman Picorial.
Paul, some of us feel that with the new money that came in, that we're rushing this through. In my opinion, we have plenty enough time to get this budget through when people have legitimate complaints, whether it's more equipment for forestry, park rangers in the O'Fallon Park in particular. E&A, and tell me if I'm wrong, Ways and Means can hold a meeting well before the end of this month, and E&A can hold a special meeting to pass out with the proper, again, with the new money coming in, we haven't even had a chance to look at or decide how we can do that. And there's plenty enough time to pass this budget out.
Well, let me address 2 parts of that question. In terms of the budget process, typically, is that you will have the hearings with the departments as you do. You have your cut and add session, which you made, and then you submit the request to the Board of E&A, and that's what you did. And E&A acted upon that letter that they received yesterday, and so that's typically what happens. Then you take it up, and remember, by charter, you need to approve the budget by the end of the fiscal year, and so you need to be able to second read, third read, and pass, and you've got 3 Fridays left to do that. So that's the typical process that goes on. Now, I'm not quite sure when you talk about new revenue.
The money that's coming in from, the money that's coming in from the treasurer's office that's going to, the NSOs and that.
That money was
And I
specifically set
understand.
aside for that purpose.
And I
And so-
understand, but there's also an additional 10 million coming over that, it could, Ways and Means could use part of that. It does, because we can, no, it's not. The money can be used if we want to use it. I understand where they want to put it, but if a small part of that money takes care of getting forestry a little bit of equipment so that they can take care of vacant lots, I'm hearing from aldermen up north. The 23rd Ward's doing fine, but I'm hearing from aldermen up north that there's a lot of problems that they're having, that a very little bit of money and a little bit more input can make a difference.
Let me, first of all, I would say that the $10 million that was identified in addition from the Park Community Division was specifically addressed for the fund balance reserve. And there's a reason for that. And I could go back to my budget presentation, which talks about our fund balances. This is something that we've been getting hammered on by the credit rating agencies. And I don't know if you look at some of our comparable cities, we're not even comparing when we get to the what percentage of reserve we need to have. Even on a cash basis, our goal has been 5%, and we're still less than that, and we're just over 3%. The fund, I can't overemphasize the need for the fund balance reserve. When you look at the last recession, we had something like $6 million on a cash basis. In 2 fiscal years, we drew that down by almost $18 million. And right now, we've been slowly building that back up. Had we had a repeat of what we had 10 years ago, we would not have the balance to cover it. So the initiative to restore fund balance, I think, has to be one of the major priorities that we have going on here. Now, having said that, the budget also includes a lot of new initiatives, as you mentioned, with the new revenues that we discussed.
Right.
For instance, affordable housing, which has got an additional $500,000. We're funding the building demolition. We're funding the public safety sales tax funds that came in, and with all those new initiatives, including recreation and social services and all. So I think the balance that you're going to have is addressing all those things with the new revenues that were approved in the last fiscal year, as well as setting aside funds for your fund balance reserve. And I think that's a sort of a balanced message to have.
I just feel we have time to still have another Ways and Means meeting to try to pass out a budget that makes sense for everyone, but that's my only opinion.
Okay, thank you, Alderman. Yeah, I understand. This is time sensitive, and, we have to get the budget passed out by June 30th. And we've had problems even making quorums with this committee. So we've canceled, I know, at least one meeting. So it is what it is. All right. Alderwoman Murphy. Was it what?
No, I passed. I
Yeah,
can
you
come
already.
back.
Good.
I have no questions. Thank you for coming.
Alderwoman Boyd.
And Paul, I'm really trying to learn this whole process, and so they explained to me we could take money out, but we can't put money in.
That's correct.
And so my question is, as the Ways and Means Committee, our role is to look at each department and try to analyze what's the best use for the dollars and where we needed to make cuts to help other departments or whatever to leverage those dollars.
Well, you look at cuts and additions. So what you do is you review the departments and say, if you have some suggested reductions, that's fine. And then if you have an addition, then that addition must be approved by the Board of E&A. So ideally, when you submit a cut and add, that type of thing, those things balance out. They don't always do. I mean, sometimes, for instance, you submit, hey, we've made a few cuts, but we also have some additions, and we don't know where to find it, and E&A tries to be accommodating in those instances. Sometimes it can't, sometimes we can. But that's how that works. And so what you sent back to the Board of E&A a couple of weeks ago was a request to consider the additions, particularly of the restoration of the NSOs, and as well as the $100,000 for the communications division. So E&A acted on that request.
Okay, so I guess my question is, because I'm the alderperson that has the concern in regards to the forestry and parks department, because they're dealing with really antique equipment that you can't find parts for. And so, as usual, the North Quarter, I put it that way, is suffering from it. And so either we are going to continuously go, just like you said with the dollars and the reserve, we're going to continuously keep going backwards, and the North Quarter is not going to be serviced, or we have to figure out a way to assist that department, just like we as Ways and Means looked at the communications department. So that was my confusion. I just feel that the way the process works, it should be different, because this is a very important committee, and I think especially for newer older people, we should have more meetings, and they don't have to be public, but they should be meetings with the committee so we can understand the process, because now what I'm hearing, well, if you already turned in everything, there's nothing you can do. But I'm hearing the mayor's office had an increase. So how you give them an increase, and I've got raggedy equipment in my ward that I can't get people to cut the grass or cut the lots, so that's not making sense to me. So at the end of the day, as many of us that sit here keep saying, it's not about me, it's about the community. So that's why I'm concerned, because I'm just like, so now I'm hearing, oh, we already locked this in and this is how it goes, but we coming on the short end. So you're giving people money that I don't see there's a need when you have people making 3 digits a year. And I have forestry equipment that we can't find parts for, so you telling the community that's okay? I don't think that's okay. I think that's a bad deal for the residents. And so I'm just trying to figure out, how can I get them equipment?
Sure. I can tell you, and that's, getting the equipment has been a big challenge for us in terms of capital, on the capital side. We've made some progress this past year, a couple areas. One, as you know, we did the refuse fee. And so in this budget, we've got $3.6 million in revenue for the refuse fee, half of which is being allocated for new refuse trucks. And so we've got a lease purchase for that, and there's been developed in a replacement cycle so it's not, wasn't going to be purchased all at once. We got a replacement cycle to reduce the average lifespan of that vehicle, and so hopefully that gets that done. Also, we have a proposal for, on the August ballot, a general obligation bond issue, which again addresses a lot of the equipment needs out there. Within this budget, we've got a new proposal with the citywide capital account of a $5.3 million rolling stock lease purchase. So we've got fire equipment taken care of with the GO, you got refuse taken care of with the refuse fee, and now we're trying to address some, and again, it's not, the list is long, but some portion of the regular service vehicles through a new rolling stock lease purchase that's in the capital fund budget, and that's in this budget. So, yeah, I agree with you. The equipment list is long, and the amount of capital monies that we have to address it are insufficient. But it's something that we're trying to piece together. I think sometimes when you look at it all in total, you get overwhelmed. So now if you can just take up segments, okay, we've addressed fire, we've addressed refuse, what else is out there? Because it's going to hit us both ways. It's not only just on the equipment side, but also on the service, on the repair costs.
Right.
If you look at equipment services,
Right.
they're overspending this year, and that's one of our problems. So that's how we're trying to address it. And again, you're on point in terms of the needs on capital improvements in just addressing some of those old equipment, and we're trying to do that with the funds we have.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Alderwoman. Alderman Muhammad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Director, when does the budget need to be passed?
It needs to be passed by July 1.
So roughly, we still have 2 weeks left to pass this budget, right?
Yes.
So if we wanted to go back to ENA and say, well, we got some changes we want to make, that's perfectly fine, because ENA will have the time to do it, right?
Technically, they would, but
Technically?
no, I mean, if you felt that you could get ENA together in the next 2 weeks, they could. But then you've got your number of Fridays. So you would already be looking at suspending the rules in order to get the bill passed. So that's one thing, because you've got 3 Fridays left to have the budget, right?
I mean, whatever necessary for fiscal transparency. So this is my problem. The Board of Aldermen has not had the appropriate time or adequate time to make cuts, to transfer money, or to have a genuine say-so in this budget process. When I look at the current budget in its form, it looks like it came straight from the mayor's office with no input from anyone else, not even the comptroller, not even the chairman of Ways and Means, not even the president of the Board of Aldermen. The current budget is full of unnecessary investment, high-paying salaries to people who do absolutely nothing, lack of a balanced budget, and wasteful spending. And that's exactly what I see with Board Bill number 1. We see more increase in public safety, which is good, but where are these resources actually being allocated? We keep seeing positions who already make $90,000 make $126,000 overnight, and we just keep seeing duplicate services who keep getting money, and more money. And we have not had the time to actually go through and make the necessary arrangements to have a balanced budget that reflects the needs of our city. My biggest problem, and I have been vocal on this for almost several months, is that I need park rangers in North City parks, especially the 2 largest parks in North City, that being Fairground Park and O'Fallon Park. We keep seeing homicides, we keep seeing car incidents, we keep seeing gang activity, illegal drug sales. We keep seeing these in North City parks. However, we do not have park rangers. And from the very beginning of the first committee hearing, I made it known that I wanted to get park rangers in O'Fallon Park. I made it known to our Director of Public Safety, to our police chief, and to our mayor. And all of a sudden, my cry is going unnoticed, like it doesn't mean anything, as if my community does not mean anything, because no one else is getting these calls from the residents of the 21st Ward saying, where are our park rangers? What are you doing, Alderman? Can we get park rangers? Do we have them? Do we have police security? And the best answer I can get them is, I'm working on it. Well, I've been working on it, and now I'm hearing that I cannot get it because we have to pass a budget that's not transparent, that's came straight from the mayor's office. That's a problem for me. So I will refuse to pass out this budget. I'm going to vote no on it. I would encourage my colleagues on this committee to vote no on it. Those of us in public office have the responsibility of making sure that public dollars are being held accountable. We have the responsibility of making sure that they are being spent where they should, and that is not happening with this budget. We all know that. We can look at this budget and tell there is no investment in where it actually needs to go. I think that we need to stop this particular process right now. I think we need to go back to day one. We need to relook at this budget, every page, look at every dollar that's being spent, because this is a budget that does not reflect the needs of people in our city, especially the ward that I represent. I'm voting no on this budget, and I will encourage everybody else to do so as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you, Alderman. Just wanted to touch on a few things. We did make some changes, and we sent some amendments over to the mayor's office, so it's not completely the way they formed it at the mayor's office or the way the budget is structured. I understand your concerns as an alderman. Rightfully so, you're trying to make your community safe, and I commend you for that. But at the same time, you know, I think you were on Ways and Means last year, and everybody that has served on this committee know this is a time-sensitive type of committee. We have to get the budget out by June 30th, really, Okay, so those things I think you kind of could have worked out or maybe did your homework ahead of time on a timely fashion. But at the same time, it is what it is. I don't run the mayor's office, and nobody up here runs the mayor's office. The mayor's office, the comptroller, and the president board of aldermen met yesterday with the board of ENA. They made their amendment adjustments and sent it back to us so we can vote it up or vote it down. So that's what we're here to do today. Now, as far as if you and anybody else has any input with the mayor's office and you want to tell the mayor what to do and the one to have the Board of ENA meeting, I commend you for that, and I'm welcome. You can go ahead and do that. But my focus today is to pass out this budget because it's on a time-sensitive basis. So, any other comments,
Yeah.
Alderwoman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can have a great sympathy for the concerns of the aldermen of the 21st Ward, but I also have responsibilities that we must meet today and continue for the future. As I've shared with all of you at the beginning of this process with this budget, I've committed myself to making sure that we continue to focus and work hard and not just be a budget committee for a part of the year, but we shall be a revenue-generating committee as well. So we'll be looking at a lot of things and also continuing to look at the budget as we move forward in the operating year after July 1. The park ranger situation is critical. I had to leave my home on Sunday and go to one of my parks and sit there and wait for the police to come because it was so out of order. I understand his plight. But for me, I prefer the police to do it because they can do all that is necessary at the moment, which means shake it up, lock it up, whatever has to happen. Park rangers are sometimes a deterrent, most times not. We have increased that budget in the last, I think we did that, 3 years ago? We added additional park rangers. It's been limited to show any change. But we can increase it again, I'm sure. One of the things I think we can do is we can go and ask for some very specific schedules to take place with those rangers. I think that's more critical than anything else. If we don't control the schedules and knowing when it's worst in our wards and have them there at those times. So I think we can work with the director over there and get those things taken care of. Monetarily, we do have some issues. We know that we are a city that has less revenue than we've had in the last 5 years, and we know we have to work on it. If we do nothing else, we need to be responsible in moving the budget forward, and we need to be even more responsible in reviewing it on a regular, thorough basis and focus on creating additional revenue for the city. Our citizens can only bear so much of this burden, but we have a lot of resources and opportunities here in the city of St. Louis to create new revenue, and we need to be about that. So that's one of the things that I want to see this committee working on. I've talked to the president of the Board of Aldermen. He is interested in doing the same thing and will help us in bringing in the appropriate other types of departments and corporate entities that can help us with our goals. Now, I know that nobody here wants to see anything other than the best service for their ward. I know that's my primary goal because I look at the whole city. But we have obligation here today, and I think that we should meet that and then look towards how we can correct some of these things for the future. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I appreciate it. Alderman Vaccaro, you got a comment?
Couple things, Paul. and we've done this in the past. I'd rather pass out a budget that makes sense. The president of the Board of Aldermen can call a meeting, full board meeting, every other day. We can do one on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We've done it in the past. So to say, well, you know, it's really going to be up to the chairman of this committee and the E&A committee to decide if they want to do what's right for the community. There's plenty enough time to do this right. If the chairman of the committee chooses to hold more hearings and in a timely manner, we can do something. To say that, well, we got only 3 meetings left, we can actually hold 9 meetings in that same time period. So we've done it in the past. And I understand the concerns. So I'm not going to support it. I'm going to vote against the way it is and put it on the chairman of this committee and E&A to listen to what some of the colleagues have to say, up especially through the North Corridor, where they're having the most problems. And if a lot of this will go toward crime prevention, because having park rangers in there do prevent, people are less likely to commit problems in a park or around if they see more enforcement. So I just want to say, it's really up to the president of the Board of Aldermen to hold extra full board meetings, which he's done before, up to the chairman of this committee and up to E&A to decide whether or not they want the input. We have a lot of new people that have never sat on this committee that no one explained the process to them.
Oh, that's not true.
And no one explained the process to them. They've come to me and said, Joe, you know, we got a problem because no one explained how this works. So to give them one extra meeting, you know, do it 24 hours from now, so we can do it tomorrow afternoon. We can do the right thing by the members of this committee. Besides, not to mention, once this gets out to the full floor, you're going to come into the same debate, because the 2 members that talked to me on the board are not the only ones that have talked to me and are concerned. So I think we try to make our corrections here where we should and send something out the floor that's not going to be debated for 4 or 5 hours and have a hard time getting through, because there's a lot of important stuff in the bill that everyone wants to see go through. So, I mean, that's just my opinion. I'm just going to put it on the president of the Board of Aldermen, the chairman of the committee, and E&A to do the right thing.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to pass our Board Bill number 1 as
Hey,
amended.
Mr. Chairman, if
Oh, are
I
you-
could, just as a
You want-
technical.
okay,
as a
you want-
technical. Yeah, you need to, because of the addition of the NSO, you want to be able to adopt that motion,
Right.
because you've already got cuts on the table from the previous meeting. So what you want to do first is adopt this packet and then do the passage.
Okay. So I'll make a motion to adopt the summary
Yes.
of the Board of E&A for fiscal 2018. Entertain a second.
Second.
Well, just for,
Can
we're
I
only
get a roll
adopt-
call, please?
We're only adopting this, not the board bill, right?
Right, yes, correct, because if you recall, in your earlier meeting, you had cuts. You had cut your ward capital, and right now that stands until you replace it.
Right. So it's being reinstated.
Yes, exactly,
Ward capital, right.
exactly.
Okay. Could you please call the roll, Madam Clerk?
Alderwoman Davis,
Aye.
Alderman Moore, Alderman Vaccaro,
Aye.
Alderwoman Howard, Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Boyd,
Aye.
Alderman Mohammed,
Abstain.
Chairman Williamson.
Aye.
Alderman Moore, Alderwoman Howard, Alderman Mohammed, 5 yes, 1 abstain.
So I'd also like to entertain a motion to pass our Board Bill number 1 as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll, Madam Clerk.
Alderwoman Davis,
Aye.
Alderman Moore, Alderman Vaccaro,
No.
Alderwoman Howard, Alderwoman Murphy.
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd,
No.
Alderman Mohammed,
No.
Chairman Williamson,
Aye.
Alderman Moore, Alderwoman Howard, 3 yes votes, 3 no votes.
Okay. All right, so look like we have a tie on that. We'll just keep it moving. Okay, thank you. I appreciate it, Mr. Payne. So we'll go ahead and move forward. We have 3 other bills that are on the agenda, and that would be from Metro Transit. We have Mr. Nations. He will come up and do a presentation. Welcome. How you doing, sir?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is John Nations. I am the President and Chief Executive Officer of Bi-State Development, and I'm delighted to have the opportunity to talk about the service we plan to provide for the residents of the city of St. Louis, all of your residents for the fiscal year, which begins July 1. We have distributed to each of your places a copy of the PowerPoint. You will be pleased to know I'm not going to read all these 40 pages to you. I understand you're pressed for time. I understand you have a very busy day. What I'm going to do is hit the highlights. Every year we leave this for you as kind of a resource. We put a lot of information in it. I really don't go through it all. I'm going to hit the real highlights for you and move your hearing along. And as always, I'll be glad to take any questions with the chairman's indulgence.
Right. And I think this is Board Bill 64, if I'm not mistaken. I guess we're going to take them out separately. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
All right. On page 6, just going through it, you'll see a map of we're really going to be talking about today is the Missouri portion of our jurisdiction. We provide services in St. Louis County, the city of St. Louis, and in St. Clair County, Illinois. You see on page 6 that we operate 30 routes in the county, only 12 in the city and the county, 5 express routes, 13 in the city. And you see some of our figures with regard to county and city miles and hours. You know, in addition to that, what often gets lost is we have 5,021 active bus stops and 451 shelters. On page 7, you can see a graph that discloses what has been a declining ridership going back to, it was increasing until 2014. It's been declining since 2015. At one point in 2013, our ridership growth as a rate of growth was leading the country. But like so many places around the country, frankly, ridership has been declining. We've got some comparables on page 10 for bus ridership and on page 11 for Metrolink ridership that will tell you we are not alone around the country. With regard to the ridership statistics, beginning on page 12 and then going for the next dozen pages, something you've become accustomed to as you've listened to us over the years. One of the things the city and all of our customers ask us is how we compare to other cities around the country and peer groups and how are we doing. We're always delighted to present the information because the team we have at Metro Transit and throughout Bi-State is a leader in our field across this country. We generally lead our industry in efficiencies and reliabilities. Our cost for putting service on the street, I say, will compete with anybody anywhere in the country. So it's something we're very, very proud of. You can go through those 12 graphs. I won't do it this morning, just in the interest of time, because I know you're pressed for time. But the team that we have providing services for Metro Transit, frankly, is one of the best in the country, and we're very, very proud of that. I am going to skip along here a little bit because I do know you're pressed for time. Let's turn to page 32. There are 4 slides beginning on page 32. This is the substance of what this meeting is all about. Beginning on page 32, you know, we talk about appropriating money, we talk about buying service. These next 4 pages tell you exactly what you are buying from us and what we're going to provide in the city of St. Louis. Now, the way the graph works out, because we get questions every year in the city and the county as to how the service is split. So what you will see over the next 4 slides is the city is on the right and the county is on the left. So let's take the 2 columns on the right on page 32 with regard to Metro Bus. We will provide about 6.4 million miles of bus service in the city of St. Louis, about 780,000 miles of Metrolink, about 1.4 million miles of caller ride, for total annualized miles in the city of St. Louis of approximately 8.6 million miles. That constitutes about 35% of the Missouri total. 65% of the miles are in St. Louis County. Moving to page 33, this breaks down our service in terms of the hours provided by the jurisdictions. Again, the city is on the right, the county is on the left, but we will provide more than 600,000 hours of Metro bus service, more than 41,000 hours of Metrolink service, about 80,000 hours of call ride, for a total of about 721,000 hours of service in the city. You'll notice that's about 43% of the Missouri service. And if you say, wait a minute, we got 43% of the hours, but 35% of the miles, that's because we generally move at a slower average speed in the city. More stops, more density, moves at a lower average speed. The operating costs begin on page 34. Taking all of this together, we break down the service, then we break it down into unit costs. The city again is on the right. The Metro bus service will cost about $63.5 million. The Metrolink service will be about $25 million. The call ride about $6.8 million, for total annualized just operating costs. Down at the bottom for the city is about $95.4 million compared to approximately $134.6 million in St. Louis County. Moving to the next page, which is page 34, which accounts for the passenger revenue, which we budget to collect. Again, the city is on the right, the county is on the left. The way we credit the fare between the jurisdictions is essentially where it is collected and where the ride begins. So it's about $12.2 million in revenue from Metro Bus, $6.1 million from Metrolink, $354,000 on call ride, for total passenger revenue of approximately $18.7 million. So if you look at those four slides, when you say we're paying by state a lot of money to provide service, what are we getting? These slides tell you the bare bones of the operational service which we provide in the city of St. Louis. Moving on, I'm going to move on quickly because, again, I know you're pressed for time. Let's move forward to page 49. Because this page we try to get on one page so that it's easily understandable and easily explainable how the financing of the service is put together on the Missouri side of the river. So you see the county and the city at the top, the 2019 operation expense by jurisdiction. You'll see the $95.4 million for the city. We also have debt expense that is assigned to the city. All of the long-term debt expense that we have and all the debt expense that we have reflected here is related to the construction of the cross-county alignment, which opened in 2006. The way we have apportioned the debt, 13% to the city and 87% to the county, is because 87% of that alignment is in St. Louis County and 13% of it is in the city of St. Louis. Then you see the local match with regard to capital projects. We're required to have local matching funds in order to get the grants, in order to do the work on our system. For the city, that's almost $2 million, $1.9 million. You'll see a line in there for sheltered workshop. And the reason for that is you appropriate taxes from three sources: a 1974 tax, a 1994 tax, and a 2010 tax. The 1974 tax, the authorization statute that was passed by the state legislature back then, requires that a small percentage of the money that you appropriate out of that tax, we actually have to pay to the sheltered workshop. It's a requirement in state law. So you pay it to us, and we're required to pay it to the sheltered workshop. It's an in and out as required by state law. So what you see is a total, the required service funding, that $40 million is working with the city. What we anticipate your three sources of revenue for public transit that you assign for public transit will collect. That would be 100% of those funds. Now you'll also see the next line down. Remember, going up, the total service will cost about $101.4 million. This appropriation hearing would provide about $40 million of those funds. The other $61 million we provide through other sources. From federal funds, we are very aggressive about how we get funds and how we put service on the street and how the whole thing gets put together. So the bottom line for the city of St. Louis is we aim to provide about $101 million worth of service for an appropriation of about $40 million from the city of St. Louis. The next slide on page 50 sets that out a little bit. From St. Louis County, we'll be requesting, going through their process, about $157.5 million. That request has already been approved by their Transportation Commission. It will be going to the St. Louis County Council. The next bullet point is the St. Louis City funding from the 3 sales taxes. In conclusion, before I take questions, there's a couple of things that I would like to say. First of all, I know that you've been getting, and everybody's been hearing about Metro Reimagined. And you've been getting some feedback from your constituents about it. We've talked to several members of the Board of Aldermen about it. What we're doing at Bi-State is we are looking at how we provide public transit service. One of the things you ask us to do every year, whether it's in group meetings or small meetings, is, you know, John, what does your data tell you? Where is the ridership? Is there a different way to do it? Are there efficiencies that we can glean? So what we're doing is we're taking all the data that we get, looking at where the ridership is, looking at what our headway is, and offering suggestions about how we might do things differently. There's been a lot of talk that we are going to decide to change bus routes or to take bus routes. We're not going to decide any such thing. What we're going to do is we are meeting with members of the Board of Aldermen, we're going to community groups, we're holding public hearings and saying, this is what the data and the ridership is telling us. But we're not going to make any changes without talking to all of you. At the end of the day, the city and all of you and all your constituents, you're our customer. You're the ones that pay for the service. We don't go in and just make arbitrary decisions. We work with all of you. That's what we've been doing for years, and that's what we will continue to do. But in an era, and it came up repeatedly in your budget hearing, as funding sources get constrained, we are constantly being asked, is there a different way to do something? Is there a different way to look at something? Of course there is, and we're glad to do that. I will tell you that long term, we're also looking at what things like Uber and Lyft and microtransit and technologies can do to increase our efficiencies, about looking at possible partnerships going forward. Does it make more sense to partner with an Uber or a Lyft to bring people to the system, and can they do it more efficiently than we might be able to do it ourselves? We don't know the answers to those things. But those are the things that we're thinking about at Metro Transit. And as you hear about Metro Reimagined, people are saying, well, they're taking a bus route. We're not going to take anything. We're going to work with the communities and with all of you to look at the data to see what makes sense for your constituents, the riders, and people throughout the city of St. Louis. I'm also glad to tell you, you know, you'll all sympathize being in public life, that often bad news hits the press, but good news doesn't always hit the press. We're always delighted to point out that we do public transit as well as anybody in the country, and we are very proud of it. We're going through another year where we have clean financial audits, no findings. Since I've been president and CEO for 8 years, we have had 6 management and performance audits. We are going through we have our 3rd one now. This is a 3rd straight one. No findings on improving management and performance at Bi-State. Things we are very, very proud of, the team we have assembled. And finally, I'd just like to say this will constitute my last budget hearing with you. I have been here for 8 years, and people were saying, has it already been 8 years? Yes, it has. And it has really been, I will tell you, for me personally, a great pleasure to work with all of you. You know, to work with people who care about the community. You've been so supportive. We've worked together on common concerns and common challenges and provide common solutions. I've enjoyed it very, very much. I consider it one of the great pleasures and privileges of my life to have had this position and to have the opportunities to work with all of you. So thank you all very, very much for the support you've given me and our entire team over the years. So thank you.
Okay, very good. Sorry to hear that. I hate to see you go, Mr. Nation. You've done an excellent job since you've been with Metro.
Thank you, Chairman.
Working with you has been a pleasure, and you will be missed. And
Thank you.
you know, hope you all the good luck in your future endeavors.
Thank you.
Sure do. Okay. All righty. Alderwoman Davis.
Well, you just gave me a shocker. First of all, let me just share that we have had some great experiences, most especially the last 3 years, as you have taken us to a new place. and understanding that transportation needs are different. They must be provided in a different way, and we will need to include more areas to have better service. And so that's been a critical conversation for a while, and I think that we are in the right place and we're doing the right things to address those needs. So I thank you for that. Your budget is always one that you never really get a whole lot more, but you try to do more with what you have. And so we do appreciate that. As we move forward in the next few years, the different modes of transportation that this world is going to be looking at, and the one that scares me the most is the driverless cars. We will have to be more innovative, and most especially with cities that have limited revenue. But if we did it right, like you said, in partnering with people, we might be able to have some revenue generated for the city in those partnerships. So I'm looking forward to that, and I thank you for all that you have done for us.
Thank you very much. You've been a great partner.
All right. Alderwoman Murphy, Vaccaro.
Just congratulations on your retirement. I have no questions.
Thank you, Alderman.
Alderwoman Murphy.
I have no questions either. I thank you for your service. I always say I grew up on a bus. If I didn't know where anything was unless it was on a bus route. And I wouldn't have been able to go to college if it had not been for public service. So I appreciate, I want to keep it going and have as many and as often as we can, the service improved. Just one question, is there a reason why the ridership has gone down? I mean, what do they attribute that to?
It's a combination of a lot of things. The number one concern we hear is safety and security
Right,
on the
that's
system,
what I was thinking,
which gets a lot of press. It's also been true that we've had generally historically low gas prices and all types of things. But that's why you're seeing it across the country.
Right.
It's not just unique to St. Louis. We're seeing it across the country. But I do want to follow. You said something that's very important, and that's that you said, I took the bus to get to college.
Yep.
The way we talk about public transit at Bi-State is really about, it gets talked about in a lot of ways, but it's about access. It's about access to a job, it's about access to education, it's about access to the things you need in your daily life, and it makes people free and independent. That's why we're bringing fresh food markets to our food deserts. That's something that we've been doing through our research institute. Free health screenings, which you've now started in the city of St. Louis over the last week or so. Not only are we trying to move people and help them get access, we're also trying to improve their lives. So we're delighted that we're able to attract grant funds and be able to serve constituents in a new way.
Thank you, and I wish you the best.
Thank you very much.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Well, I'm not going to repeat what everybody else said, so I know you're going to hear that for a while.
Well, thank you.
But I'm excited about Bi-State because you all are thinking outside the box and you're doing things that's never been heard of. Because when my kids and I were riding the bus, you never heard of the things that you all are doing now. So congratulations.
Thank you.
And I hope Bi-State keeps thinking outside the box and reaches those communities.
Thank you. I hope so too. I think they will.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
Okay. So I'll entertain a motion to pass out Board Bill 64.
I'll make a motion, we pass Board Bill 64 out with a due pass recommendation.
Excuse me, excuse me.
Oh, I thought you left. Okay, you got any
that's
questions?
fine.
Okay.
No, honestly, I don't even have anything to say. You just
Okay.
forgot me.
Yeah, I forgot you. Forgot you.
Mr. President, you can only retire if you take Ken Franklin with you.
All right.
That'll have to
Is
be
that all
part of
you
the
got,
motion.
All right. I'll make a motion to pass out Board Bill 64, and I think it's been moved and seconded. Mr. Clerk, could you call the roll?
Alderwoman Davis,
Aye.
Alderman Moore, Alderman Vaccaro,
Aye.
Alderwoman Howard, Alderwoman Murphy, Alderwoman Boyd,
Aye.
Alderman Muhammad, Chairman Williamson,
Aye.
President Reed. You have 6 aye votes, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Board Bill 64 has been passed out with due pass recommendation.
Thank you.
I'll also make another motion to pass out Board Bill 65.
Second and previous rule.
Been seconded, it's been previous row. Board Bill 65 has been passed out with due pass recommendation. I'll make a motion to pass out Board Bill 66.
Second, previous rule.
It's been seconded, it's been previous roll call. Board Bill 66 has been passed out with due pass recommendation. Thank you. We have one more board bill on the agenda, Board Bill 77. We have the budget director. He's going to come up and do a presentation on that, Mr. Paul Payne.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Do have a handout on this one as well.
What is this? Board Bill 77.
If you recall, when I presented the budget for the FY19 budget, I told you that I gave you a brief update on the current fiscal year's budget and where we were falling short on some revenues and we had some expenditures that were over budget, so that we needed to pursue a supplemental appropriation in the current fiscal year in order to end up with the year in the balance, with an ending year balance. I want to go through some numbers with you. On the revenue adjustments through June 1st, you can see that our biggest shortfall in revenues this year is on the earnings tax, estimated about $6 million. I've been talking with the Collector of Revenue's office. One of those had to do with the fact that last fiscal year we had a one-time transaction of about half of that amount that was non-recurring, so that adds to those results. Now, the payroll tax and sales tax have improved a little bit in the fourth quarter. So you can see, well, the sales tax in particular, which was below budget, is now at budget, but it's only slightly, about $200,000. Property taxes outperformed by $1.4 million, and the franchise utility taxes, because we had received a $2.2 million settlement from Ameren UE, that was sufficient to bring those utility taxes, which were slightly trailing, to overperforming. Now, we've had some shortfalls as well. In departmental receipts, both city courts and EMS are trailing estimates by about $2 million in total for departments. And also the correction per diem reimbursements, these are payments from the state for prisoner housing. Timing of that, the state has been slower. There's a technical issue with those, is that they are pledged to payment on the debt for the Justice Center. And so when we receive those payments, they go to a trustee who then releases them for the debt payment. Well, those two release dates are in February and August. So if we receive revenues from the state after February, it doesn't count for this fiscal year. So that was part of the issue there. And then the intangible tax, which is a state distribution on financial institutions, that actually outperformed this year. And then we have some other items which are outperforming. But overall, we're looking at a potential revenue shortfall in general fund of $5.5 million. Now, in terms of overspending, as you recall from the early first quarter of the fiscal year, both the police and fire departments had significant overtime expenditures, and I'm projecting police department overspending on personal services by about $2.3 million, and the fire department by $1.5 million. ESD, we're having equipment services divisions having repair costs currently running over $1 million in budget, and we're looking to address some of those on the capital side, but got $700,000 as their overage. Police liability judgments. If you recall from the current fiscal year, there was a rather large settlement agreement in which we are sharing with the state, and that was pre-local control. $2.9 million in overspending. And so underspending, so what did we do in the current fiscal year? What we did was to address some of these revenue shortfalls and overspending, we slowed down on hiring, which I'm sure you've heard from the departments. We've and frozen some non-discretionary spending. So you can see that other departments are underspending by about $5.9 million, and we had some non-personal services accounts which were encumbered by $3.1. We also have, with corrections being a little bit down on their census, they're underspending on their contractual, and the refuse disposal is coming a little under by about $200,000. So those reductions end up being about $3.2 million, leaving us with the $3.2 million for the supplemental appropriation, and hopefully that balances out. And again, this is on a cash basis. And I can tell you that it's almost important that we try to continue to balance out the budget by the end of the fiscal year, because again, when rating agencies come back and look at your performance, that's one of the things they look at. And that's what I've got for the supplemental.
Thank you. The chairman is walking back to his seat.
Where we at?
Budget Director has just finished giving us the summary for the Board Bill number 77. We're now ready to take any questions.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Do you have any?
I don't.
Okay. Alderman Vaccaro.
No question.
Okay. Alderwoman Howard.
She's not here.
I'm sorry. Murphy.
No question.
Okay. Alderwoman Boyd stepped out. Alderman Muhammad. Won't forget you this time.
No question.
All right. Okay. So I'm gonna make a motion to pass our Board Bill 77. Do pass. Can I
Second.
get a motion?
Previous.
We can't do
Previous roll.
previous roll.
Oh, can't.
When someone's out of the room, we cannot do previous roll.
Oh, she's gone.
Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Alderwoman Davis,
Aye.
Alderman Moore, Alderman Vaccaro,
Aye.
Alderwoman Howard, Alderwoman Murphy,
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd, Alderman Muhammad, Chairman Williamson,
Aye.
President Reed. You have 5 aye votes, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Board Bill 77 has been passed. I will do pass recommendation. Thank you, Mr. Payne. Appreciate it. Okay, now we're supposed to hear from the NAACP. They're going to come up and do a presentation. Yeah, sure you can. We're not voting on anything, but he wants to do a presentation.
Right.
Welcome. This is the president of the NAACP, Mr. Adolphus Pruitt. Thank you for coming. And
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate you taking the time to receive this document we have for you. I also have with us the president of the Missionary Baptist State Convention, Reverend Lyndon Bowie, and he's a part of this. I have some copies.
sure.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
the history on this issue is one that is clear in the St. Louis region and in some cases across the nation. When there is a officer-involved shooting, especially one that has resulted in the loss of life, that the issue of unrest that leads to both building mistrust between the police department and the community. It interrupts commerce. It gives the city and the region a black eye. It creates all sort of negative impacts on the community. And the only way that issue is going to be abated is that we have an independent officer-involved shooting investigative unit. That is one that is both has the trust of the community and has the trust of both the police department. Without that entity, each and every time there's a use of force in the city of St. Louis and in most cases in the region, each and every time, and it results in the loss of life, we can find ourselves right back in the throes of what happened as a result of the shooting of Michael Brown in Ferguson, the thrones of what happened as the shooting of with the Stockley trial, what happened with all of these shootings, and with Philando. Mr. Chairman, it goes on, and there's no reason for us not to be able to put a mechanism in place to begin to address this issue. And of course, it takes dollars to do that. And so what we want to do is work with the Ways and Means Committee to begin now to have that discussion, to begin now to try to identify dollars for next fiscal year, so that as we begin to develop this model and we begin to have a model that is workable, the issue of funding for it we have been addressing all along the way as we develop that model. And there are several models out there that we've looked at that seem to be promising. We do know there was a bill that was before the board in last session to deal with this. We do know it did have a fiscal note attached to it of about $1.3 million. Again, we want to restart those discussions. We think that budgetary number may be a number to look at this point in time. It could decrease or increase based on the model we come up with, but there is a group of individuals from the clergy community, the NAACP, and others, and we're about to move forward on a overall criminal justice reform for the city of St. Louis. We're working with the Circuit Attorney's Office as relates to that, and this is one of the things that are going to be a priority that is going to come out of all of this work that we're about to do. And again, we don't want to come in here right in the middle of budgets next year and start saying, hey, find us some money. We believe that we can work with you all now as a committee, begin to look at those areas and find it. And last, and I'll turn over to Reverend Bowie, but last thing is this. It was interesting when we looked at the police expenditures for the past 4 years. We look at overtime and look at all of the costs that was associated directly with dealing with unrest that was a result of a police-involved shooting. Those dollars far exceeded the budget amount that was being asked for in that last bill. It was triple that amount. And so if we can abate and prevent those sort of expenditures in the future, I think we had the ability to find the money in the budget to create a unit that would go a long way. Reverend Bowie.
Thank you. And I do appreciate this opportunity to come before you. As has already been stated, our primary objective is to begin a dialogue now that we can start addressing some of the budgetary issues surrounding this independent investigative unit. Because we're really serious about justice reform. The models that are all across the country, there are some very good models. We in St. Louis can use some of that here in our own city. As has already been stated, if we do the knee-jerk reactions, it's very costly to this economy because of the drain that it puts on our already strained economy. And so our goal is to begin this dialogue with this committee. We're already starting dialogue with other entities so that we can begin the criminal justice reform that would, for this particular cause, relieve the circuit attorney of the responsibility for investigating the police. And I think that when it comes to public trust and the public reaction to police-involved shooting, a lot of the distrust and the concern that the community has is in how this is going to flesh out. And with the circuit attorney being so connected with police and either having a very good relationship or not so good relationship, because of the fact that now she's investigating the people that she has to work with every day. We believe that if you had an independent investigator, that would then free the circuit attorney up to do the job as far as finding the right type of approach to dealing with criminal justice in the area, and then leave that burden of prosecuting potentially or investigating anyway those police-involved shootings to another investigator. And so we're simply seeking to build this relationship with the Ways and Means Committee. We do represent a broad-based group of individuals, not just clergy, not just NAACP, but a lot of community individuals as well. Some of them are at other sites doing other things, but we're here and we are going to be asking to meet with you guys for the next year or so that we can begin to put in place, hopefully, those things that will make this possible. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate it. And I think what you're doing is an excellent job. You need to be commended for it. And coming to make the awareness that what really needs to be put in place when it comes to special investigation, so we can start working to set aside some funding for that so we can alleviate a lot of the problems that we're having with some of the investigating through the police department. And also with the circuit attorney assistant with some of those. I'll be willing to work with the circuit attorney's office and also the NAACP and any other entity that can make an improvement when it comes to law enforcement and to shed some light to fairness when it comes to an investigation. So we really appreciate that. You know, you can call me anytime if you'd like to sit down and talk about it and talk to the committee. We'll be more than happy to listen to you and try to work out some ideas so we can submit some type of funding in the near future. So we'll go ahead and see if the committee has any questions. Alderwoman Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I do appreciate this effort. We were very interested when the circuit attorney came before our committee for the diversion program and have plans to support it even more in the future. One of the asks from me is that if we're looking at a program like this, that we need to be all-encompassed of what is required, not only to deal with the police investigation side of it, but to also work with the victims in a more holistic way. And so I think it's important that we work with our Department of Health, that we work with the Department of Mental Health, that we also have the opportunity to bring in as many opportunities for what I call intensive care through social services to work with these cases as well. Because most of it probably could have been prevented if people had received those services beforehand. But many times they'll also have the same problems later on if we don't provide those services at the point that we know it's needed. So I just hope that we add that to it.
As a matter of fact, as you read through what we've handed out, there is a piece in there for that, that same component. Where we do want to engage the mental health side of this and the victims and the families of those victims so that we can have a holistic approach to what we're trying to do.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Alderman Vaccaro is not here. Alderwoman Howard. Murphy, can you have it?
I said, thank you very much, gentlemen. I said I concur with what the Alderman from 19th Ward said, so I won't repeat anything. I'm always willing to work and try to improve the situation for the city as a whole. Thank you.
Alderman Muhammad.
Thank you, Mr. Pruitt and Pastor. You know, making sure that our circuit attorney has the resources she needs to have an efficient officer. An efficient office is a big priority of the Board of Aldermen, specifically the Aldermanic Black Caucus. We have worked with our circuit attorney to ensure a number of things that she can be successful. And actually, we did propose legislation last session to give her an independent investigation unit, and we are hoping that it will pass the full board this session. So I am happy that you guys are leading the effort, and I think it's going to make a great partnership between the Black Caucus, the Board of Aldermen, the NAACP, and the Missouri Baptist Convention if we can successfully pass this thing in the interest of making sure that St. Louis is safe and that we have a transparent and accountable independent investigation unit. I appreciate everything you guys are doing.
Okay, very good, Alderman. All right, thank you for coming in.
Appreciate it, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, anytime. We'll see you soon. So that concludes the Ways and Means Committee meeting today. We'll stand adjourned. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Can you stay for transportation?